And let's get the proper source sheet up on our screens. Can you see it?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay,
You make it a little bigger?
I will, yes. All right, we are in Parshat Vayechi, which is the final parsha of Sefer Brachot. Okay, so there's a lot of tying up of loose ends. As far as the narrative goes, the most important and central thing is we have the death of Yakov Avinu, the death of Jacob, which is preceded first by his blessing of Yosef's sons, Ephraim and Manasseh, and then by his blessings of all 12 tribes. Yakov then, right, really interesting topic we're not going to get into tonight. His last wish, his last request is Al Natik Bareni B'Mitzrayim, please don't bury me in Egypt. He wants to be buried back in the Me'arat HaMachpelah, the Machpelah cave, where his ancestors are buried. And interestingly, we read that he is mummified or embalmed in order that they can transport his body back to the land of Israel. The Parsha then proceeds to tell us of the death of Yosef. And quite interestingly there, he also makes a request to be buried in Israel. Really fascinating is that Yaakov's request is carried out basically right away. There's a period of mourning in Egypt, but then we read that as soon as that period of mourning is over, he is transported back and buried in Me'arat HaMachpelah, and then they all return to Egypt. When Yosef dies, however, we know that he is not returned to Israel right away, but he remains buried in Egypt for the entire duration of the servitude of Bnei Israel. We have a really interesting midrashic account that as they're preparing to leave during the plague of darkness, that all the Jews, right, the Medrash tells us, are searching the Egyptians' homes for riches to be paid for all the work that they did. And Moshe is searching for Yosef's coffin so that he can carry it back. And when Bnei Israel leave Egypt, we read that they carried Yosef's bones with them. So Yosef remains in Egypt for the duration of the slavery, which is a really interesting thing to consider. And that's basically how Sefer Brachot ends, right? The Jewish people in Israel are in Egypt. Everything at this point between them and the Egyptians is good. And it's only in next week's Parsha, don't want to spoil too much, but right, with the rise of a new Paro, that right, Asher lo yada et Yosef, who did not know Yosef or chose not to remember or not to recognize or acknowledge what Yosef had done for the Egyptians, that the servitude and the trouble for the Jewish people begins. So that's the basic outline of the Parsha. We're going to focus tonight on the Brachot, the blessings that Yakov gives to his children.
Yeah, that's
So,
interesting.
and not necessarily the details. The details are quite interesting, and as you read them, as we'll read them in a moment, not all of these are immediately apparent as being brachot. Right? It's not clear that everything that Yaakov says to his sons is even meant to be a bracha, a blessing, if that's how we're going to define bracha. So we'll see that in a moment. So let's just let's read a few psukim to get ourselves into it. We're in chapter 49. Vayikra Yaakov el banav vayomer, and let me know if I need to scroll down in the English. Hey asfu va'agira lachem et asher yikra etchem ba'acharit hayamim. Jacob gathers his sons and he says, "Gather, and I will tell them." He calls his sons and he says, "Gather, I will tell you what will happen at the end of days." Hikatzvu v'shim'u b'nei Yaakov v'shim'u el Yisrael avichem. Gather and listen, the sons of Jacob, and listen to Israel, your father. So again, not for tonight, but a lot is said about why Yaakov refers to himself by both names, right? What's the significance of the name Yaakov versus the name Yisrael? Again, we're not going to focus on that detail tonight, but it's something interesting to note. So that's how he introduces these brachot, or these I don't know what even to call them, that he is going to tell to his sons. And let's just read a few of them to give us a flavor. We're not going to focus on every single one, but let's just read a few. Reuven, Bechori ata, kochi bereshit oni, yeter she'er ve'yeter az. Reuven, you are my firstborn, my might, and the first fruit of my vigor, exceeding in rank and exceeding in honor. Pachas kamayim al totar ki alita mishkavei avicha az chilalta yitzue Allah. Unstable as water, you shall excel no longer. For when you mounted your father's bed, you brought disgrace. My couch he mounted, referring to the incident with Reuven and Zilpah. So again, this does not quite sound like a nice, feel-good bracha, blessing, with which one would want to give to your child as sort of your last will and testimony. Right? It seems more of a curse. And that continues in the next one. Shimon v'Levi achim klei chames mecherotehem. Shimon and Levi are a pair. Their weapons are tools of lawlessness. Besodam al tavo nafshi, bikalatam al techad kvodi, ki be'apam hargu ish uvirtzonam akru shor.
I'll call you later.
May my soul not enter into their gathering, into their secrets, into their convening, in their gathering. May my honor not be associated, because in their wrath they killed a man and they willingly uprooted an ox. This seems to be a reference, of course, to what happened in the city of Shechem after the capture and rape of Dinah. Aurora pam ki az ve'evratam ki kashata. May their anger be cursed, for it is great, and their wrath so relentless. Therefore, I'm going to spread them out among the Jewish people. And then we get into more conventional blessings, right, with Yehuda. Yehuda, atayo ducha achecha yadcha be'oref oivecha yishtachavu lecha b'nei avicha. Judah, your brothers shall praise, your hand shall be on the nape of your foes, your father's sons shall bow down to you. Gur Aryeh Yehuda miteref bini alita kara ravatz karyeh yuchlavi mikumenu. Judah is a lion's whelp. Pray, my son, have you grown? He crouches, lies down like a lion, like a lioness who dares rouse him. The scepter shall not depart from Judah, nor the ruler's staff from between his feet, so that tribute shall come to him, and the homage of the people be his. Okay, and it continues like that. So we have with the beginning, the first three brothers don't seem to be giving a blessing, but more of a curse or a rebuke. But then it gets into more conventional, traditional blessings for the remainder of the tribes of the brothers. I guess from the narrative perspective, we should call them the sons, Yaakov's children. Yaakov's the one speaking. And then it concludes in verse 27 or 28. Sorry. Kol Eila Shiftei Yisrael Shneim Asar. V'zot asher diber lahem avihem vayivarich otam ish asher kevirchato beirach otam. All these are the tribes of Israel, 12. This is what their father spoke to them, and he blessed them. Each person, each man, according to his blessing, was he blessed, or did he bless them? Okay. Any initial reactions or thoughts to this long section? Any questions that might come up?
The first thing that occurred to me was perhaps it was a way of Yakov making the case to all of them that Yosef really deserves a lot of the blessings of a firstborn. And so he's knocking out the first three. And he also wants the others to unite really under Yehuda, I think. I mean,
Right.
he was clearly, he was given a cloak supposedly earlier on anyway to recognize his potential for leadership and all, and then he kind of lost it, and then now he sort of has regained it. But then afterwards we realized that he can't really hold them all together either because they're so afraid of Yosef's recrimination against them. So in a way, he's opening up, trying to open up some pathways of unity from their perspective, perhaps, or something like that. I don't know.
So that's interesting. So Anne says first that maybe he is, that the words are so harsh to Reuven, Shimon, and Levi in order to dispel any notion that the Bechorah, the firstborn, is going to go to the eldest children. That's an interesting thought. And maybe specifically he's making the case for Yosef, right? In the blessing that he gave to Yosef's sons, Ephraim and Manasseh, right? Then he gives a bracha to Yosef that he's going to receive a double portion, right? And so that double portion is that his two sons, Ephraim and Manasseh, are counted as equals among the other tribes. So maybe he's making the point here of including Yosef, and then we get into the interesting question, well, if it's to prove the leadership or the Bechorah goes to Yosef, we would expect Yosef to be the leader, but the leadership is given to Yehuda. Yehuda is the one who's going to become the ultimate king. So if we look further on in Tanakh, it's true that the northern kingdom becomes ruled by Menashe, which is one of the Yosef tribes. But generally, we focus on the southern kingdom and the leadership of Yehuda. So it's, maybe it just falls short, but it's an interesting dynamic being set up between the brothers and what exactly Yaakov is envisioning for them. Any other details that jump out at you? Questions, reactions to this?
This is a very troubled family.
Yes.
To put it mildly. And that Yaakov has to depend on their descendants being able to grow up, mature, find a modus vivendi, a way to get along, is taking a risk. So,
well, he doesn't have much of a choice, right?
No, but all he can do is speaking of Tolad Yaakov has only a mouth to say something.
Right. It does give rise to a really fascinating question, which is, we take for granted that it's a troubled family. It's not so clear that Yaakov knew the extent of it. He must have known there was something going on between the brothers and Yosef, but did he ever know what the brothers did to Yosef? The Torah doesn't tell us one way or the other. So that's a really interesting question to ponder is, did Yaakov know that it was the brothers who sent Yosef, wanted to kill him and sold him into slavery and caused all this this pain? We don't know. We don't know.
But I think the ending verse you chose is extremely important, especially at the very end of it, giving each of them all the blessings that he had given each one individually. Is how the translation in front of me. I'm sorry if I didn't give you yours. Would you agree with that translation? I'm sorry, I don't remember.
Well, we're going to get that. That's where we're going to get to. It's not clear, but it is significant, right? That it says Kol Eila Shiftei Yisrael Shnei Masar, that all these are the tribes of Israel, 12 in number. So emphasizing, despite perhaps the shortcomings of some of the tribes or whatever tension or trouble dynamic Yaakov did or didn't know about, right? The Torah is telling us that all 12 are included among the children of Yaakov, right? It's not like the paradigm that had been set forth by previous generations, where only one son, one descendant carries on the family legacy. It's all 12 now. And so that is certainly significant. And how we understand the last part of that will become the focus of the rest of the shir.
Good.
Right, each asher kavir chato be'rachotam, each, right, so the simplest translation is each one according to his blessing, to the blessing deserving or becoming to him, what was he blessed.
But not the Rashi. Yeah, I see. Okay, yeah.
Okay, so source number 2 points us to one interesting linguistic phenomenon in these verses. It's picking up on the fact at the beginning that we saw, Vayikra Yakov abanav vayomer he asfu. Yaakov calls his sons and he says, gather, and I will tell you what will happen at the end of days. As an aside, a lot of commentaries spend a lot of time trying to explain what's meant by Yaakov's desire to tell his children what's going to happen ba'acharit hayamim, at the end of days. Again, we're not going to focus on that because I have no way of making any sense of it. Rashi famously says that Yaakov wanted to tell them what was going to happen in the future in the times of Mashiach, but this wasn't something that he was allowed to share, so it became blocked off to him. But anyway, it says that pasuk says Hey Asfu, and the next pasuk says Hikatzvu v'shimu b'nei Yaakov. Hikatzvu is another way of saying gather and listen, sons of Jacob. V'shimu el Yisrael avichem, and listen to Israel your father. So the simplest explanation for this seeming redundancy, why does it say Hey Asfu and Hikatzvu? Right? Why does it say b'nei Yaakov and Yisrael? Because this is poetry, and in biblical poetry, we have an amplification, a repeating of phrases, which just adds to the poetic language. But the Medrash picks up and says, why does it have to say Hey Asfu and Kiptzu? Why does it have to say gather twice? So in source number 2, the Medrash tells us, Hey Asfu me eretz Mitzrayim v'hikatzvu leRa'amses. So gather yourselves from the land of Egypt and assemble in the city of Ramses. Hey Asfu me aseret hashvatim v'hikatzvu l'shevet Yehuda u'Binyamin. Gather from the 10 tribes, right? A precursor to the divide in the northern and the southern kingdom. So gather from those 10 tribes and assemble by Yehuda and Binyamin, by the 2 southern tribes. Tziva otan liot nohagim b'shevet Yehuda u'Binyamin b'kavod. He commanded them to treat the tribes of Judah and Benjamin with honor. We can understand the tribe of Yehuda because that's the tribe of kingship. Why Binyamin is deserving of honor is not immediately apparent. But anyway, again, just trying to make sense of why this redundancy. Rabbi Acha Amar Hitzaharu. Rabbi Acha says it means purify yourselves. Hechmat de Amar v'yasfu v'gomer v'tiaru et haleshachot. In Nehemiah, when Nehemiah is commanding the people to purify themselves, he first tells them, Hey Asfu, gather, and then purify the temple. Rabbanan Amrei, Tziva Otan al HaMachloket. The rabbis understand this not so much as a redundancy or a double amplification of gathering, but rather that he warned them against machloket, against dispute, against disagreement. Amar lahun, tiu kulchun asifa achat. And he said, rather than being divided, you should all be one asifa. Now, who knows what an asifa is?
A communal gathering.
A communal gathering, yeah. So in very recent times, the term asifa was used. I don't know if you remember a few years back, probably 5 years at this point, there were a number of of gatherings in the Haredi world to talk about abuse and dangers of the internet and everything. And those were called an asifa. So asifa is a gathering, but it has that interesting modern twist on it. So, but the Medrash says that Yaakov wants his descendants, his children, to be one united gathering or one united entity, not divided. Hadu dichtiv, Yata ben Adam kach lecha eitz echad uchtov alav lifnei Yisrael. I have the entire pasuk in the English. You, O mortal, take a stick and write on it of Judah and the Israelites associated with him. Take another stick and write on it of Joseph, the stick of Ephraim, and all the house of Israel associated with him. The children of Israel were made one united entity. Prepare yourselves for redemption. What does it say afterwards? I will make them a single nation. So this verb of le'esof, to gather, is associated with unity, with the Jewish people being one. Okay, so and in this understanding, Yaakov is warning his sons against machloket. That might explain why he highlights the negative traits of Yehuda, Shimon, and Levi, because in their negative traits, Reuven, Shimon, and Levi, in those negative traits might be disruptors or might get in the way of this unity that he's seeking. So he's giving an extra warning to them: don't let these traits dominate, but rather make sure that you're able to come together as one.
That's a reflection, if I may insert, of the expression "e pluribus unum" that is on a lot of American currency. Out of many, one is essentially an echo of the phrase "form an asefa," an assembly or a convention, something like that, and the issue of dealing with different kinds of communities. It's a curious thing. The American money has, at least the dollar bill has a pyramid on it.
Right, with a little
It's an
eyeball.
allusion to Mitzrayim and Yitzias Mitzrayim, and on top of the pyramid is a group of stars, which are arranged, 13 of them, into a Magen David display.
Yeah.
And just this concern that this little experiment from 250 years ago might not be able to hold together.
Yeah. Hold that thought, Robert. We'll come there in a moment. Just interestingly, as an aside, we said that not all the brachot seem to be brachot. And the Sforno notes when the Torah says Vayevarechotam, that Yaakov blessed them, Bizulat Masha Amar Lamala, in addition to what was recorded above, meaning that these words that we read, that we described as the bracha of Yaakov to his sons, those aren't necessarily the bracha. The bracha was a private thing that he gave to each one, and this was something else with these words that we just read, so that each one really did get a proper blessing, a proper bracha as we conventionally think of it, but it wasn't necessarily all recorded in the Torah. That's an aside. Rashi, and this is where Anne and Robert wanted to go, and Rashi really begins the path towards this understanding. Tells us back in source number 3, Ish asher kavir chato, each according to his blessing. Bracha atida lavo al kol echad ve'echad, the blessing that will come in the future to each one of these tribes or these sons. Birach otam, he blessed them. Right, so Rashi here is picking up on another linguistic oddity. It says Yaakov blessed each child kivir chato, according to his blessing. In the singular, beirach otam, he blessed them. Right, so we often, the commentators often pick up when there's a change in personage from the singular to the plural. Right, that's going to be of significance. So how does Rashi explain that transition, that shift? Lo hayalo lomar ela ish asher kavir chato beirach oto. Should have said each according to his blessing, he blessed him. Matzu tamulomar beirach otam. Why does it say he blessed them? Lefi shenatan liYehuda gvurat Ari, ulevinyamin chatifato shel ze'ev, ulenaftali kaluto shel ayal. Since he gave Judah the strength, the fierceness, the bravery of a lion, and to Benjamin he gave the rapacity of a wolf, and to Naphtali he gave the speed, the agility of a deer, or of a ram. We might have thought that each one was excluded from the bracha of the other one, right? That they weren't all included. So that's why the Torah switches to the plural to say he blessed them, that each one was somehow included in the bracha of the other. So by blessing Yehuda to be like a lion, that somehow includes Binyamin, Dan, Naphtali, Zvulun, etc. And the Or HaChaim really elaborates on this thought in a very beautiful way. In source number 5, the Or HaChaim says, Asher kavir chato, right, according to his blessing in the singular, Perush hara'ui lo kefi bechinat nishmato kefi ma'asav. That means each according to what was deserving or appropriate for him, according to his soul, his actions, his right, each person's own disposition. Ki yesh lecha lada'at, ki nafashot kol achat yesh la bechinat ha'ma'ala, yesh shema'alata kuna, v'yesh malchut, v'yesh keter Torah, v'yesh gvura, v'yesh osher, v'yesh haslacha. You should know that each soul, each person has its own highest level of achievement, right? That's how I'm going to translate it. Each person, each individual soul has its proper and fullest realization, way to realize its potential. Some are fit for priesthood, some for kingship, some for studying Torah, some for strength, some for business, for wealth, some for success. I'm not sure what he means by success. But each individual has what they're most suited to do. The bracha, of course, is if you're able to do that which you're most well suited to do. Nitkavein Yakov b'nevuah levarich kol echad kafi birchato ha'uila. So Yakov wanted to bless each of his sons that they should achieve and realize that which is most fitting for them. Hamelech b'malchut, hakohen b'kahuna, v'alkein v'chein al zeh haderech v'lo hefech hamesilot. Right? That whoever was fit to be a kohen would be a kohen, whoever was fit to be a king would be a king, and that they shouldn't go on a contrary path from what they were best suited to do. So that's how he explains the birchato in the singular. What does he do with beirach otam? He blessed them. Amar otam bilashon rabim, says them in the plural. Liot ki birchat kol echad ve'echad to'il le'atzmo u'lechol echad. That is to say that the blessing for each individual should be beneficial for that individual and for all the other brothers. As when you bless a king, that he should choke or defeat his enemies. Well, clearly the entire nation, all the brothers would benefit if the king defeats his enemies, so everyone benefits. Just like and so when each one realizes their full potential, then clearly the others will benefit as well. And that's the significance of the switch to the plural, beirach otam, that all of them should benefit and be blessed by each one's bracha. Okay, so Robert, I think this is what you were hinting at, right, with the e pluvius unum from many. What did I get that right? from anyone, right? And I think this is what you were kind of saying, how you wanted to read the pasuk at the beginning. I think you're right in line with the Orach Chaim.
Oh, wow.
And
Well,
that's
I'd
good
rather
company.
I'd rather take a psychological look at all of it though myself, of course.
Okay.
I mean, it, one of the themes with Ruvain and Shimon and Levi is that they all acted very fast and with a lot of anger. And that is something that is just not ever good, according to the Rambam. I mean, he finds ways of balancing everything else out, but not anger, not quick anger. It's really very close to idolatry as far as he's concerned, you know. And I mean, there are lots of different ways of looking at it, but I'm sure, but that's a very strong one. So the fact that he kind of puts them aside, he's suggesting that they all really learn how to be patient and to control their anger. So, you know, that could be applied to all of the rest of them. And then I'm thinking about it, of course, in terms of the Sefirot, which we'll learn a little bit more about, I hope, on Tu B'Shvat, how both men and women can, you know, enter into the conversation in that way. And that's, I think, important when thinking about these as all of the sons and all of the children. Well, where are the women here? They aren't here, supposedly. They were all married off, though, to one of the others, you know. But the focus of unity still comes from, notice, one of Rachel's children is connected with the southern tribes, and the others are connected with Yosef, with the northern tribes. So it isn't as if there isn't a joint mother. Same thing with Leah. You have children on one side and children on the other side, and they are children of Leah. So there are potentially ways of seeing how unity can come about. You can't just say, well, these are obviously the children of this mother and the other. No, it's not that simple. But there's so much to be learned here from all the commentaries, I find, in terms of personality traits and how he's also saying that. I mean, he's using a lot of words to flesh out feelings here. It depends on how the translation is done, of course. But that's what I would love to go further with this, and I really appreciate your calling our attention to all of it.
Okay, thank you. Beautiful thoughts. So if Aaron Lichtenstein elaborates on this Orach Chaim in a very beautiful and powerful way. First, he says, right, let's just appreciate what Yakov is doing here, right? That of course we, as you know, we would expect a parent to give individual blessings, or to at least be able to recognize the strength, the unique traits, unique skills and abilities of each of their children. And the more children you have, the harder that might be to do. So the fact that Yaakov endeavors for his 12 sons, and Anne, you raise a good question, what about the daughters? But for his 12 sons, to give them individualized, personalized bracha is of note. Again, we shouldn't expect that it wouldn't be the case, but it's not necessarily an easy thing to do. And so that's the first thing he says. But then he picks up on something fascinating in the Orach Chaim. Right, the Orach Chaim says, right, when he was talking about the need for individual blessings, each one asher kevirchato perush harui lo kefi bechinat nishmato ukefi ma'asav, according to his soul and according to his deeds or his actions. So Rav Lichtenstein writes, the Orach Chaim stipulates two criteria for tailoring the guidance of a child: reflecting his particular essence and reflecting his actions. The particular essence of the child is what makes him uniquely himself. The educator must pay attention to what the child excels in and where his main abilities lie, then must encourage him in those directions. However, this is not enough. The educator must also consider his actions, what the child does and what he desires, and then help him progress and improve in those areas, right? So it's one thing to recognize that someone has great skills when it comes to science and scientific analysis and all that, but some scientists are meant to be lab researchers, and some scientists are meant to be doctors, or to be more hands-on, to be more clinical. And so it's important to recognize both the tendency, the strength, the traits, the abilities of the child, of a student, and also how those abilities should best be channeled and nurtured. And there's a third element that Rav Lichtenstein sees. Along with these considerations, the child's particular essence and his actions, there is, of course, another consideration, the needs of the collective. Every person must ask himself which of his abilities can be put to good use and have a positive impact, where he might be the right person for the job, where his talents are most needed. This creates a whole and complete society in which every individual fills the role best suited to him and thereby makes his optimal contribution, while at the same time enjoying the unique talents and abilities of his peers. So very powerful. That's how he brings together these two ideas, right? The fact that if each individual realizes their full potential, then the entire family, the entire nation, the entire society will benefit. He says that has to be because these abilities, these skills, these inclinations have to be nurtured and developed with a perspective of the community in mind, right? It very much reminded me of all these stories we hear of the pioneer generation coming to the land of Israel, the Chalutzim, and right, those who were able and fortunate and blessed enough to be able to take a step back and say, how can I best contribute to this fledgling society, this fledgling country, this new place, right? So there are many stories of people who went to get advanced degrees specifically in agriculture and geology, right? And as a result, we're able to help drain the swamps, we're able to help really grow Israel's agricultural industry. That people, when people took on this perspective, they were able to really benefit society in a way which I think Rav Lichtenstein is talking about here. And he concludes with just a beautiful thought. It happens to be that this relates to what we've been studying Shabbos afternoon from Avot Rabbi Natan. So, and I think it's something that's familiar to most of us. He quotes the Mishnah in Pirkei Avot, Al Shlosha Dvarim Ha'olam Omeid, Al HaTorah, Al Avodah, Al Gmilut Chasadim. The world stands on three things: on Torah, on divine service, and on acts of kindness. At the same time, he notes that the rabbis teach in the Gemara Yevamot, anyone who says, I have only Torah, he does not have even Torah. A person has no right to devote himself exclusively to a certain avenue before engaging in all three realms, thereby consolidating his common basis with all of Am Yisrael and a sense of rootedness in the collective. Okay, so we have to really do, whatever we do has to be with all three of these factors in mind. What am I best suited for? What are my skills? How can I best actualize those skills and those tendencies in my way of thinking? And how can I do this all in the service of the greater community, of the greater Am Yisrael? And that's what Rav Lichtenstein says is the bracha that Yakov is trying to bestow upon his children. So I just wanted to end the shir with one not fully developed thought, but an idea that I think carries some weight, and you'll tell me what you think about it. So this, of course, these brachot that Yaakov gives to his children marks the end of Sefer Brachot. Sefer Brachot, right, is the story of the development of the family of Avraham Avinu into, at the very beginning of Shmot, is when we really become identified as a nation as opposed to a large clan or family. So what is the mission that this story begins with? Beginning of Sefer Brachot tells us the story of humanity, creation, the flood, Migdal Bavel. Then we come to Avraham. The rest of the book is about Avraham and Avraham's family and descendants. What's the mission that Avraham is given at the very beginning?
Haaretz.
Okay, so he's told to go to the land. It's right here in source number 8. Vayomer Hashem el Avram, lech lecha me'aretzecha u'mimoladetcha mibeit avicha la'aretz asher areka. God appears to Abraham at this point and says, go from your land, from your birthplace, from your father's home to the land that I will show you. Ve'escha legoy gadol v'avarcha v'agadla shemecha v'heyei bracha. I will make you into a great nation. I will bless you. I will make your name great, and you will be a blessing. V'heyei bracha. So there's many ways in which this directive, v'heyei bracha, are understood. Rashi, for example, source number 9, Heyei bracha, habrachot nitunot biyadcha. The blessing, the power to bless, are entrusted to you. Ad achshav hayu biyadi, birchati la'adam, birachti la'adam v'noach, me'achshav ata tivarech et asher tachpot. From up until this point, I, God, gave blessings. I blessed Adam, I blessed Noah. From now on, you will give blessing to whomever you desire to bless. The Chizkuni says, V'heyei bracha, bracha tieh mitzuya b'chol asher ta'aseh. Blessing will be found in all that you do. Right? Whatever you do will be blessed. That's what it means, V'heyei bracha. You will be blessed. Not that you'll be a blessing, but you will be blessed. The Gemara in Psachim says quite interestingly, Amar Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish, Escha legoy gadol, riffing on the pasuk we just read about Avraham, I will make you a great nation, Zeh shomrim Elokei Avraham. This refers to that which we say, presumably in the Amidah, the God, right? We bless God of Abraham. Va'avarchecha, I will bless you. Zeh shomrim Elokei Yitzchak. That is why we say that refers to the God of Isaac. Va'agalah shemecha, I will make your name great. Zeh shomrim Elokei Yakov. This refers to when we say the God of Jacob. Yachol yu chosmin b'chulan, Talmud lomar v'heyei bracha. V'cha chotmin v'ein chotmin b'kulan. Presumably, the Gemara is asking, why is it in the Amidah that we begin by saying Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu v'Elokei avotenu, Elokei Avraham, Elokei Yitzchak, Elokei Yakov. Blessed are you, God, God of our fathers, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, the God of Jacob. But we conclude that bracha, Baruch atah Hashem, Magen Avraham. Blessed are you, God, who protects Abraham. Why do we only conclude with the name of Abraham and not with all of the avot? So he says that's what it means. V'heyei bracha, v'cha chotmin, v'ein chotmin b'chulan. We will conclude the bracha with the conclusion is seen as a summary or emphasis of what's most essential in the bracha. So we conclude with the name of Avraham and not with all of the names, not with all of them. So that's how the Gemara understands V'heyei bracha, that the ultimate blessing, the essential blessing, is in Avraham's name. What I wanted to suggest perhaps is that another meaning of God's directive to Avraham at the beginning of this journey that his family, his descendants are going to embark on is Heyei bracha, be a blessing in the singular. And at the end of Sefer Brachot, Yakov embodies and realizes that very idea, that very goal. right? That he's able to have 12 children, recognize all of their unique abilities, but ultimately it's one bracha. Even though it has 12 parts to it, it's one unifying bracha because we're one unified people, we're one unified nation. And that might be another way of understanding this as both the conclusion of Sefer Brachot and as a realization, perhaps, of the mission that Hashem gave to Abraham. And there's one more step in this unfinished, unpolished thought, and that is if we go to source number 14. This is the Sifrei, the Medrash on Devarim, commenting on the final parsha in Chumash, Vizota Bracha. Vizota Bracha sheberach Moshe Isha Elokim et Bnei Yisrael lifnei moto. This is the blessing that Moses, the man of God, gave to the Jewish people before his death. And then Moshe goes on, just like Yakov, to give a unique blessing to each one of the tribes. So the Medrash tells us, Zot HaBracha, Ze Mosif al Bracha Rishona Shebercho Yakov Avinu. This adds to the original blessing that Yakov had bestowed. Vizot asher diber lahem avihem vayivarich otam. Right? And it picks up on a really interesting thing. In our original source, the first passage that we saw, where Yaakov, right, gives the blessings to each of the children, the concluding pasuk reads, Kol ela shiftei Yisrael shnei masar, all these are the tribes of Israel, 12. Vizot asher diber lahem avihem, this is what their father said to them. Vayivarich otam ish asher k'virchato v'yirach otam, he blessed them, each according to his blessing, he blessed them. Vizot asher diber lahem. This is what he said to them. The Medrash picks up and says, Vizot is the same word that Moshe's bracha is introduced with. So when Moshe blesses the Jewish people with Vizot, it should direct us back to the bracha of Yakov. Yinseinu lemedim shemimakom shesiyem Yakov Avinu levarech et banav misham hitchil Moshe uberchan. So this teaches us that exactly where Yaakov left off in blessing of his sons, Moshe picked up from that very point to bless them. Shene'emar v'zot bracha, harei zoe mosif al bracha rishon, as it says, zot bracha by Moshe. This adds to the original blessing. The Ezo, what is the blessing that Yaakov and Moshe gave to the Jewish people? Zot tefillah, it means prayer. Shene'emar tefillah l'Moshe Ishem Elokim. Okay. So anyway, it picks up and says that, right, this blessing that Moshe gives at the end of his life is a continuation of the bracha that Yaakov gave. And if the blessing of Yaakov was to each of his 12 sons, that they should be one united family, one united clan, then we could just amplify that with the bracha of Moshe. Each of the tribes should be as one united nation. And again, if that's the case, if there is really something to what haven't fully thought out and developed yet, that just as Sefer Brachot ends with the realization of the bracha of Avraham on a familial level, on the level of the family, then Sefer Devarim and the Chumash concludes with Moshe's bracha to the Jewish people as a realization on a national level of that same mission, that same bracha that Hashem gave to Avraham. Anyone buy it?
Oh, sounds great.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, few. All right. So with that, I know we didn't quite meet every week of Sefer Brachot, and I'm sure there'll be weeks in Sefer Shmot also that we won't be able to meet. But we have studied together. We can say Sefer Brachot, and hope that you found our classes, our questions, our sources enriching. And please join us in Shul this Shabbos as we'll say the Chazak, Chazak, V'nit Chazek. We will move on from Sefer Brachot, and next week at the same time begin our studies of Sefer Shmot.
Very good.
All right.
Thank you so much, Rabbi.
My
Thanks.
pleasure. Thank you. It's great to see everyone. Hope you have a wonderful night and a good week, and we'll hopefully see you in Shul on Shabbos.
Yes.
Stay
I have
stay
one
healthy.
Thing to offer.
Yeah. Sure. You too.
Okay. Bye.
Here's this is a thought that if we participate in each other's endeavors to enhance Jewish unity, this is what the Rebbe is saying, making us receptacles for God's blessings. Certainly, it will include the ultimate blessing of redemption.
Most definitely. Beautiful. Thank you, Ann.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll see everyone on Shabbos.
Thanks
Good
again.
night.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Night.